There are moments in life when you can't explain why you feel different, and for a long time you may have tried to ignore it. You blended in when you could, stayed quiet when it felt safer, and learned how to survive in spaces where you never fully belonged. Yet no matter how hard you tried to be like everyone else, something inside you refused to settle. You sensed it as a child before you had the words for it. You noticed it in rooms where laughter felt forced and conversations felt shallow. You felt it when others seemed content with routines that left you restless. This wasn't pride, and it wasn't rebellion. It was awareness. God was already marking you, long before you understood what that meant. You didn't choose to feel this way. You didn't wake up one day and decide to be different. In fact, if you're honest, there were seasons when you begged God to make you normal, to make life easier, to let you fit without friction. But heaven was silent in those prayers, not because God ignored you, but because what you were asking for would have diminished what He placed inside you. There are people called to blend, and there are people called to stand out. Standing out is never comfortable, especially when you don't yet know why. From an early age, you sensed things others missed. You noticed shifts in moods, unspoken tensions, hidden intentions. You felt burdens that weren't yours and emotions that didn't originate from you. This made you feel strange, even overwhelmed. You may have been labeled too sensitive, too intense, or too serious. But the truth is, God tuned your spirit to frequencies most people never hear. Sensitivity was not your weakness. It was your training. As you grew older, life didn't get easier. In fact, it often felt heavier. You faced rejection that didn't make sense, opposition that seemed unnecessary, and delays that tested your faith. Doors closed even when you did everything right. People misunderstood your heart, questioned your motives, and sometimes walked away without explanation. These experiences shaped you, but they also wounded you. There were nights you questioned God, asking why obedience didn't lead to peace, why faith didn't spare you from pain, and why calling often felt like isolation. Yet even in the confusion, something kept pulling you back to God. You drifted at times, yes, but you never fully disconnected. His presence felt familiar, even when you were frustrated. His voice, though quiet, felt steady. You couldn't abandon Him because He never abandoned you. That tug you feel, the one that keeps drawing you back, is proof that your life is tethered to purpose. God separates before He elevates. This is a pattern woven throughout Scripture. Before David stood before a nation, he stood alone in fields. Before Joseph governed Egypt, he endured betrayal and prison. Before Moses confronted Pharaoh, he spent years in obscurity. Before Jesus began His ministry, He endured isolation in the wilderness. Separation is not punishment, it is preparation. You felt different because God was protecting you from environments that would have diluted your calling. He allowed friendships to fade, not because you were unlovable, but because they were incompatible with where He was taking you. He permitted loneliness so that you would learn to hear Him clearly. He slowed your path so that your foundation would be strong enough to carry what is coming. There were moments you blamed yourself for not being further along. You compared your timeline to others and wondered why your progress seemed delayed. But delay does not mean denial. God was doing something deeper than visibility. While others were building platforms, He was building character. While others were chasing applause, he was strengthening your obedience. While others were celebrated, you were being refined. Refinement is painful because it strips what is comfortable. God touched areas you wanted to keep hidden. He challenged beliefs you thought were settled. He exposed wounds you hoped would heal quietly. But he never did this to shame you. He did it to free you. Healing is uncomfortable before it is peaceful. You are not imagining the weight you feel. That pressure is not anxiety alone. It is responsibility forming. God does not place weight on people he doesn't trust. You carry depth because you are meant to steward depth. Your life is not meant to be shallow or surface level. You are called to impact hearts, not just occupy space. There were times you felt overlooked, even invisible. You watched others receive recognition while your faithfulness went unnoticed. You served without applause. You prayed without immediate answers. You obeyed without confirmation. This tested you more than open opposition ever could. But heaven sees what people miss. God keeps records when humans forget. You may not realize it yet, but your endurance has already disqualified many others. Not everyone can survive seasons of silence without losing their integrity. Not everyone can be hidden without becoming bitter. Not everyone can wait without compromising. You stayed. You wrestled. You questioned. But you didn't quit. That matters. God has been shaping your discernment. You now recognize what drains you and what fuels you. You sense when something is misaligned. You no longer chase what once distracted you. This is growth. This is maturity. This is evidence that the old version of you cannot return because you have outgrown it. Feeling different was the first sign that your life would not follow ordinary patterns. Your calling requires awareness, courage, and surrender. It requires you to stand when others sit, speak when others stay silent, and trust when logic fails. This path is not glamorous, but it is meaningful. It is not loud, but it is powerful. And here is the truth that settles everything. God does not awaken people without intention. He does not burden hearts without purpose. He does not separate lives without destiny. What you are sensing now is not confusion. It is alignment beginning to take form. This season is not about rushing. It is about readiness. God is not asking you to perform. He is asking you to be present, to listen, to stay soft, to remain obedient even when clarity is partial. The next steps will come, but first comes stillness. You have felt different your whole life because you were never meant to live an ordinary one. And this realization is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of understanding why God has been so intentional with you from the very start. As awareness begins to settle in, you start realizing that feeling different was never meant to isolate you forever. It was meant to teach you how to stand before you were ever asked to lead. God does not rush the formation of people He intends to use deeply. He allows time to press you, not to break you, but to reveal what is inside. Pressure exposes motives, strengthens convictions, and clarifies identity. And you have lived under pressure longer than most. There were seasons when you felt misunderstood, even by those closest to you. You explained your heart, yet your words seemed to fall short. You expressed concern and were labeled dramatic. You set boundaries and were called distant. This confusion hurt because your intentions were pure. But God was teaching you a quiet lesson. Not everyone is meant to understand you, And clarity does not always bring connection. Sometimes it brings separation. You learned early that approval is fragile. People support you when it benefits them, but disappear when growth requires discomfort. This taught you not to build your identity on affirmation. Instead, God anchored you in obedience. You learned to keep going even when applause was absent. You learned to trust His voice over the noise of opinions. That discipline will sustain you when influence increases. At times, you wondered why God didn't surround you with more help, why the load felt heavy while others seemed to move effortlessly, why you carried burdens no one assigned to you. But heaviness often indicates capacity. God entrusts weight to those who can carry it without collapsing. What felt unfair was actually evidence of trust. You became familiar with silence. Not just external silence, but the quiet moments when God seemed to pause. Those moments were unsettling because you are wired for movement. But silence trains discernment. In stillness, you learn to recognize subtle shifts. You learned when to wait and when to move. You learned the difference between impulse and instruction. Disappointment visited often. Expectations didn't unfold the way you envisioned. Promises seemed delayed. Opportunities appeared and vanished. Each time, you adjusted your heart, choosing faith over frustration. That choice mattered. God watches how you respond when outcomes don't match prayers. Your restraint preserved what impatience would have destroyed. You may not see it clearly yet, but your life has been structured around refinement. God has been pruning your attachments. He removed relationships that once defined you. He closed doors you thought you needed. He unsettled plans you carefully constructed. None of this was random. He was protecting you from settling too early. There were moments you wanted clarity more than comfort. You asked God to explain Himself, to show you the full picture, to give you certainty. But instead, He gave you just enough light for the next step. Faith is not built on full visibility. It is built on trust developed through consistency. God remained consistent even when answers were incomplete. You learned how to recover quietly. Your strength does not come from dramatic comebacks, but from steady perseverance. You fall, reflect, adjust, and continue. That rhythm is rare. Many quit when momentum slows. You stayed when progress was internal rather than visible. Over time, your discernment sharpened. You became less impressed by appearances and more attentive to substance. You noticed patterns in people's behavior. You sensed when something was forced. You recognized when peace was absent, even if everything looked right. This awareness did not make you judgmental. It made you cautious. You no longer rush into connections the way you once did. You guard your energy because you understand its value. This is not selfishness. It is stewardship. God does not ask you to pour endlessly without replenishment. He asks you to be faithful with what you carry. There were seasons when temptation presented itself as relief. Shortcuts looked appealing. Compromise promised ease. But something inside you resisted. Even when no one would have noticed, you chose integrity. That decision shaped your future more than you realize. God honors private obedience publicly, often later, but always intentionally. Your prayers evolved. They became less about outcomes and more about alignment. Less about control and more about surrender. You stopped asking God to bless your plans and started asking Him to shape your desires. This shift marked maturity. It revealed trust. You have learned that obedience does not guarantee immediate reward. Sometimes it guarantees refinement. But refinement produces endurance, and endurance produces authority. Authority is not loud, it is steady. It is recognizable without announcement. People feel safe around it even if they can't explain why. There were moments when you questioned whether the cost was worth it. Whether carrying depth, sensitivity, and discernment was too heavy. Whether a simpler path would have been easier. But you were never wired for shallow living. Ease would have bored you. Comfort would have limited you. You were created for impact, not convenience. God has been teaching you how to lead yourself before leading others. How to listen before speaking. How to wait without losing momentum. These lessons are unseen but invaluable. They form leaders who are grounded rather than reactive. You are beginning to understand that your difference is not a flaw to be corrected. It is a calling to be embraced. The very things that made you feel out of place are the things God will use to bring clarity to others. Your sensitivity allows you to see what others miss. Your restraint allows you to move wisely. Your patience allows you to endure where others quit. Even now, God is inviting you into deeper trust. Not louder faith, but quieter confidence. Not faster movement, but precise obedience. He is preparing you for moments that will require calm under pressure, wisdom under scrutiny, and compassion under misunderstanding. You may not yet see the full picture, but pieces are coming together. The delays are making sense. The separations are becoming clearer. The resistance is easing. This does not mean the journey is ending. It means you are becoming ready. What lies ahead will require everything you have learned in the hidden seasons. Your capacity for stillness, your discernment, your endurance, your humility. None of this was wasted. And as you continue forward, you will realize that the loneliness, the confusion, the waiting, and the refinement were not detours. They were the path. And the God who led you through them is the same God who will lead you into what comes next. As readiness begins to form, you start noticing subtle shifts within yourself that others may not see yet. Your reactions are different. What once triggered you no longer has the same power. You pause more. You listen longer. You speak less, but when you do, your words carry weight. This isn't because you've become detached. It's because discernment has replaced impulsiveness. God has been teaching you restraint, and restraint always precedes authority. There was a time when you felt the need to explain yourself constantly. You wanted to be understood, validated, and seen accurately. But now you're realizing that explanation often weakens conviction. Not everyone deserves access to your process. Some people only want information so they can critique it. God has been teaching you to move without announcement, to obey without broadcasting, and to trust Him without external confirmation. You've also noticed that your tolerance for misalignment has decreased. You can no longer stay comfortable in spaces that drain you, even if they once felt familiar. Conversations that lack depth leave you restless. Environments driven by ego feel heavy. This isn't judgment, it's awareness. Your spirit recognizes when something does not belong to your next season. There are moments now when God asks you to walk away without explanation. No argument, no closure, no final speech. Just obedience. This is difficult because your heart values understanding. But some exits are meant to be silent. God knows that if you try to explain, you'll be tempted to compromise. Silence protects obedience. You may have noticed that people respond to you differently than before. Some are drawn to you without knowing why. Others become uncomfortable in your presence. This is not about personality. It's about alignment. When someone carries clarity, it exposes confusion. When someone walks in peace, it unsettles chaos. Not everyone resists you personally, some resist what you represent. God has also been refining how you carry compassion. You still care deeply, but you no longer absorb everyone's pain. You've learned the difference between empathy and responsibility. You can intercede without internalizing. This protects your strength and preserves your joy. Burnout is not a badge of faithfulness. Sustainability is. There were times you felt guilty for resting. You equated exhaustion with obedience. But God has been retraining you. He is teaching you that rest is not retreat. It is alignment. Even Jesus withdrew. Even he stepped away from crowds. Rest sharpens discernment and preserves clarity. Your prayer life has deepened. You speak less, listen more. You've learned that God often answers not with words, but with peace. A peace that settles decisions. A peace that guards your reactions. A peace that confirms direction without explanation. This kind of peace cannot be manufactured. It comes from alignment. You've also become more comfortable with uncertainty. This is growth. You no longer panic when answers are delayed. You trust that timing is as important as direction. God has shown you that premature clarity can sabotage purpose. What you don't know yet is protecting you. At times, you still wrestle internally. Obedience doesn't eliminate questions, it anchors you through them. You wonder how things will unfold, how long certain seasons will last, and whether you're interpreting God correctly. But even in questioning, your faith remains intact. You've learned how to doubt without disconnecting. Your past wounds no longer control your future. They inform you, but they don't define you. You recognize patterns that once trapped you. You see red flags earlier. You no longer confuse intensity with intimacy or familiarity with safety. Wisdom has replaced urgency. God has also been preparing you for visibility. Not spotlight, but responsibility. Influence always comes with scrutiny. People will watch how you respond, not just what you say. That's why God has been shaping your reactions privately. Public moments expose private foundations. You may still feel like you're in between seasons. No longer who you were, not yet who you will be. This in-between space is sacred. It is where clarity sharpens and identity settles. Rushing through it would cost you depth. God values depth over speed. You're learning to trust your internal compass again. There was a time when disappointment made you second-guess yourself. But God has been restoring confidence, not arrogance, but quiet assurance. You're beginning to believe that hearing Him doesn't require perfection, just surrender. Some relationships will not make the transition into your next season. This doesn't mean they were wrong. It means they were seasonal. God is gentle, but He is firm. He removes what would distract you later. What feels like loss now will feel like protection later. You've also noticed an increased sensitivity to timing. You sense when to speak and when to stay silent, when to act and when to wait. This is not hesitation, it's discernment. Discernment moves slower but arrives stronger. God has been reminding you that obedience is cumulative. Every small yes matters. Every moment of restraint builds trust. Every time you choose alignment over approval, something shifts in the unseen. Heaven responds to consistency. You are being prepared to carry weight without being crushed by it, to lead without losing humility, to speak truth without losing compassion. These balances are learned, not assumed, and you have been learning them well. There will be moments ahead when people question your path, when your decisions don't make sense to them, when obedience looks like foolishness, but you will recognize these moments. You've been trained for them. You'll choose peace over proof. God is not rushing you. He is steadying you. The foundation is being reinforced because what is coming requires stability. Sudden growth without depth leads to collapse. God refuses to build quickly at the cost of integrity. You may not yet see the impact of your obedience, but it is already moving ahead of you. Seeds planted in private are taking root. Conversations you haven't had yet are being prepared. Doors you haven't knocked on yet are aligning. And as this awareness continues to deepen, you will realize that the season you are in now is not about doing more. It's about becoming ready to carry what God has already prepared. As everything begins to converge, you start sensing an internal urgency that feels different from anxiety. It's not frantic. It's focused. It's a quiet awareness that time matters now in a new way. You're not being rushed, but you are being summoned into attentiveness. God is asking you to live awake, to notice, to listen, to treat ordinary moments with reverence, because alignment often hides inside what looks mundane. You may find yourself revisiting old memories, not with pain, but with clarity. Moments that once confused you now make sense. Rejections that felt personal reveal their purpose. Delays that frustrated you now look strategic. God is not reopening wounds. He is showing you how intentionally He guided you through them. Nothing was wasted. Not the tears. Not the waiting. Not the silence. You are also becoming aware that your voice carries authority now, even when you're not trying to lead. When you speak, people pause. When you listen, people feel seen. When you pray, things shift. This authority did not come from position. It came from endurance. Authority grows in people who stayed obedient when no one was watching. There is a deeper calm settling in you. Not because life is perfect, but because fear no longer dominates your decisions. You've learned that clarity doesn't come from control, it comes from trust. And trust doesn't require certainty. It requires surrender. You've practiced surrender in the small things, and now it's becoming instinctive. God has been preparing you to handle responsibility without losing tenderness. This balance matters. Hardness would limit your reach. Fragility would exhaust you. So God taught you strength that stays gentle, conviction that stays compassionate, discernment that stays humble. You may notice that some people attempt to reconnect now. Old relationships circle back. Familiar patterns try to re-enter. This is not coincidence. As you move closer to alignment, distractions often test your boundaries. God is watching how you respond, not to punish you, but to protect what He's built. You no longer feel the need to chase what left. You don't argue with doors that closed. You don't romanticize past seasons. This doesn't mean you're ungrateful. It means you're grounded. Gratitude honors the past without living in it. There is also a growing awareness of responsibility, not pressure, but stewardship. You understand now that your life is not just about personal fulfillment. It's about impact. People will draw strength from your obedience. Your restraint will teach others wisdom. Your peace will model trust. God has been training you to hear Him clearly in complexity, not just in quiet prayer, but in real-time decisions, in conversations, in conflict, in uncertainty. This kind of discernment doesn't shout, it nudges, and you've learned to recognize it. You may still feel moments of hesitation, not because you doubt God, but because you respect the weight of obedience. You understand now that saying yes changes things. Alignment rearranges priorities. Calling requires consistency. You're not afraid, you're sober. God has been separating you from urgency driven by fear. He's teaching you to move with purpose instead of pressure. When you act now, it's because something aligns internally, not because something pushes externally. This distinction protects you. Your patience has matured. You no longer confuse waiting with stagnation. You understand that God moves beneath the surface long before anything appears above it. Roots form in silence. Strength develops in stillness. When growth emerges, it is stable. There are moments when you feel gratitude for what didn't work out. You see how easily you could have settled, how quickly you could have compromised, how subtly you could have drifted. God's interruptions were mercy, even when they felt painful. You are also recognizing that influence doesn't always look like a platform. Sometimes it looks like presence, like consistency, like quiet faithfulness that shapes environments without demanding attention. God trusts you with influence because you don't crave recognition. The closer you move toward alignment, the less you feel the need to defend yourself. You don't over-explain your choices. You don't internalize misunderstanding. You let God handle perception while you handle obedience. This frees your energy for what matters. There is a strengthening happening internally. You feel anchored, less reactive, more intentional. Your decisions reflect values rather than emotion. This doesn't mean you've become cold, it means you've become clear. God has also been refining how you handle disappointment. When things don't unfold as expected, you recover faster. You adjust without spiraling. You trust without forcing. This resilience didn't come naturally, it was learned through repetition. You are beginning to recognize the moment you're in, not with fear, but with reverence. This is not a season to rush. It's a season to remain faithful in small things. To stay soft, to stay obedient, to stay available. God is positioning you, not abruptly, but intentionally. When the time comes for greater responsibility, it won't feel foreign. It will feel familiar, because the posture required then is the same posture you're practicing now. You may still feel unseen at times, but you are not unrecognized. Heaven records what earth overlooks. God trusts you because you've proven faithful in hidden seasons. Trust always precedes assignment. There is a quiet confidence forming in you, not arrogance, but assurance. You know who you belong to. You know what you carry. You know what you're willing to release. This clarity simplifies decisions. As everything continues to align, you'll notice fewer distractions holding your attention. Lesser things lose their grip, noise fades. Focus sharpens. This is not discipline alone, it's desire being refined. God is not asking you to strive. He's asking you to remain steady, to keep listening, to keep responding, to keep choosing alignment even when it costs comfort. Because what's coming will not require a new version of you. It will require the version you've been becoming all along. And you're closer now than you think. Now everything begins to settle into place, not with noise, but with certainty. You're no longer asking the same questions you once did. Not because you have every answer, but because you trust the one who does. There is a difference between confidence and clarity, and you are learning to live from trust rather than proof. This is where maturity shows itself, not in knowing what's next, but in staying obedient when the next step hasn't fully revealed itself yet. You can feel it now, the sense that a chapter is closing, not abruptly, but decisively. You're not clinging to what was. You're not rushing toward what will be. You're standing in the middle with peace. That alone is evidence of growth. Earlier versions of you would have panicked here. They would have overthought, overplanned, or over-explained. But this version knows how to wait without wasting the moment. God has been preparing you not just to receive, but to carry. There's a difference. Receiving is momentary. Carrying is ongoing. Carrying requires character, endurance, and humility. That's why your preparation took time. That's why shortcuts were blocked. That's why easy exits never felt right. You weren't being delayed, you were being equipped. You are beginning to understand that your life is not meant to be loud to be effective. God is not commissioning you for performance, but for presence. People will feel steadied around you. Confusion will quiet. Tension will ease. Not because you have all the words, but because you carry peace authentically. Peace that has been tested. Peace that remained when circumstances didn't cooperate. There will be moments ahead when others look to you for guidance, even if they don't call it that. They'll ask questions casually, but they're listening deeply. They'll share things they don't normally share. This isn't accidental. God is positioning you as a safe place, not because you're perfect, but because you're grounded. You are being commissioned into faithfulness that doesn't need validation, into obedience that doesn't require applause, into leadership that doesn't demand control. This is rare, and it's powerful. You will notice that when opportunities come now, they don't feel chaotic. They feel aligned. They may still stretch you, but they won't violate your peace. God will not contradict what He has built in you. What comes next will require courage, but not confusion. Surrender, but not fear. There will still be moments of uncertainty. Commissioning doesn't remove humanity. You will still feel the weight of responsibility. But now, instead of overwhelming you, it will anchor you. You know where to return when things feel heavy. You know how to listen. You know how to pause. You know how to pray without panic. God is trusting you with influence because you no longer crave it. He is trusting you with visibility because you've proven faithful in hiddenness. He is trusting you with weight because you've learned how to lay things down. Your past no longer threatens your future. You've made peace with it. You've forgiven what needed forgiving. You've released what needed releasing. Not perfectly, but sincerely. And sincerity is what God honors. There will be days when the impact of your obedience surprises you. When someone thanks you for something you didn't realize mattered. When a small decision echoes further than you expected. When faithfulness produces fruit long after the seed was planted. These moments will confirm what you already sensed, that God was working even when you couldn't see it. You are stepping into a season where your yes carries weight, where alignment matters more than enthusiasm, where consistency matters more than intensity. This is not the season to impress, it's the season to steward. God is not asking you to become someone else. He is asking you to remain who you've become, to keep choosing truth, to keep choosing humility, to keep choosing obedience, especially when it's quiet and unseen. You will not have to force doors open. What is meant for you will recognize you. What isn't will lose its grip. Discernment will continue to guide you. Peace will continue to confirm you. And when correction comes, it will come gently, because your heart is teachable. This is not the end of striving, it's the end of striving alone. You understand now that partnership with God doesn't mean perfection. It means availability, willingness, trust. And here is the truth that seals everything: God does not bring people this far to abandon them. He does not refine without purpose. He does not awaken hearts without intention. If you are still here, still listening, still responding, it's because He is not finished. So step forward with humility, stand firm with grace, speak when led, be silent when instructed, love deeply, discern wisely, obey promptly. You don't need to announce this season. You don't need to prove anything. Just walk faithfully. Because you were never meant to live an ordinary life. You were meant to carry something sacred. And now, you're ready to steward it. Stay awake, stay obedient, and trust that the God who prepared you will also sustain you.